So next up we have Roger Bradshaw from DIA. He's talking about better project management with Praxis. And so we're going to go real fast on this, but did you know that Roger once successfully managed a team building exercise where his team built a working raft from recycled materials and sailed it across a lake? I don't know which lake, but a lake. And he also collects vintage typewriters. So why not? There we go. Thanks, Roger.
Look, thanks very much. And I'm going to be very quick because I know that we're just running a bit behind time, but I just ask you to stand up and just move because it's a long stretch to be in a place like this, as wonderful as it is, as the Minister had rightly said. And if you could sit down. So firstly, thank you to everybody for their time. Thank you also for tangata whenua, and they've been acknowledged this morning, and also for, I guess, my connection. My connection is for my children. It was Ngāti Kahungunu, and so I guess that's some pepeha there as well. And also to the Govis committee, who do a great job. And I think when we see the voluntary sector and the community of which we're part of, and it's great to see that involvement and engagement. So I'm just going to talk briefly about investment, and it's probably the most dry subject in the whole afternoon that I'm going to traverse, but it's a really important one because the Minister was here only a moment ago and she was talking about a lot of things being digital. And to do that, you've got to spend money. And how do you spend money? And how do you place money in the right places and achieve what the government calls outcomes and outputs? And so really, if we think about digitisation, we should really be focused about outcomes and outputs. And one of the ways, I don't want to steal the thunder, and I talked to Pete briefly this morning and said, can I steal your story about the land that you brought in Waikanai? Because I did the same thing, but I brought land in a place called Whangimiwana. It's a former sheep station, a big pastoral station in the Wairapa. And I got a bit of land, and I did exactly what Pete did. Looked at this wonderful view out to the Cook Strait, out to the Orongononga mountain range, to where Jim Cameron's bought some land, and out to the Cook Strait to the Seaward Kaikoras. And then I found out that the consultants are going to cost this. And the engineering consultant said that we know that's earthquake prone. Well, the earthquake is right here, as you experienced last night, right? And so eventually I've come to the conclusion that I'm actually becoming a project manager, not by desire, but by default. And also stealing open source in terms of a theme, Praxis, what is it? Well, Praxis is actually not open source software. Ha, got ya. Because you thought it was, but it's not. It's actually a framework. And who would think that you could have a portfolio program and project management framework open sourced? Well, there you go, you can. And someone made this great quote, and one of the consultants that helped me with some of this work reminded me of it in speaking to me a couple of days ago, and I'm going to blame Leanne Spice for that. We haven't got the money, so we have to think. And we can sort of twist that and pivot that to innovation. So thinking and innovation go one and the same. And if you're those people that are nerdy, like Treasury economics, might remember a little thing that Treasury do called think, plan, act, do. Well, this is the thinking bit. This is thinking about how we plan an outcome or an output. And this is what it comprises of. So it's essentially a completely open source program, P3, if you want to call it that, where you can just grab down all the resources free, doesn't cost you a cent, and you can have a unified language speaking the same outputs and outcomes with a whole lot of things that we all need when we put a business case together called better business benefits, business cases, the type of accreditation that we need for programs and portfolios, Prince 2, MSP, and P3 in some cases. Where do you start? You start anywhere. And you can start at the appropriate level and for the context of what you're trying to deliver. You don't have big, heavy, laden overhead if you have a small project delivery. But you do have a sizable overhead when you have a large delivery. The one I'm thinking of, and I'm just going to give you a little trick question here. At the end of the slide, I'm going to ask you a question on how long you think the largest portfolio in New Zealand has taken to come to fruition when it was started in 1903 in terms of investigation. But I'm going to ask you how long you thought the largest piece of civil infrastructure in New Zealand took to build to actually plan from the first delivery to the last delivery. And just hold that thought, and I'll come to it in a sec. The business case. I can hear you all groaning. It is quite. It is necessary. It is important, and what we don't do enough of is we don't probably look at it enough and analyse enough and spend enough time looking at it. But it's facilitated and helped by Praxis. And also, if you want to just go and buy into that share and just reuse and etc., you can actually get a local version put together, and you can actually claim that thing as long as you acknowledge with that particular Creative Commons licensing regime. As long as you acknowledge the source, you can actually adapt it to your local instance or local chapter, and therefore just customise it as you will. It's not going to go forward. That's interesting. Has it died on me? Oh, no, there. So there we go. So this is a program that got started in 1903. It's dedicated to a couple of people that died on this, one on this particular project as well, that I'm aware of, but also to the engineer back in 1903, who actually died and got pleurisy in this area in the 1930s, I think, or the 40s, maybe even earlier still. This is a project that spanned probably, it's up there, but it produces 1,350 gigawatts of power, all renewable, because someone had a vision all those years ago. But it was planned over a period of that time span. It is a portfolio. It was developed in phases. The first phase of this was actually I did a cyber talk in Auckland, and I had a picture of one of the power stations, and it consumed the whole, I thought they'd be really interested in the cyber stuff, but they just got consumed by this power. It was a generator that was part of the scheme that was sitting a mile or so below the river. And they all got fixated on it. But anyway, for what that's worth. But this is a really successful scheme of how the state can deliver. And if you think IT's a problem, you try and build a tunnel that runs from the length of Waiouru to Rangipo, and see the Italian tunnellers over the years stuck in the middle of the Kaimanawas, carving this tunnel in the desolate area of the desert road, and this is what got produced. So what's the last word, I guess? The last word is the Auditor General, because he gets to oversee all this investment cycle spending, and some principles, and I think those principles are pretty sound, but the one that really comes to mind is the one at the end, and it's called value for money. So value for money should come about when we become more innovative and think further on how we're going to design and develop an outcome or a output. And that's me.
Oh, look, you've only got one question, so it's easy. Why is it so hard for government agencies to comply with their obligations from a Cabinet circular?
That's an extremely good question, and there are probably multiple answers to that question, and they'll be unique to every individual circumstance. And I don't know if there's one thing, but I did touch on what Alex had raised around risk methodologies. And one of the things that I've sort of seen, and I don't quite know why, because I've come out of banking and insurance, and I know what op risk is, and I know what the three lines of defence is, but I've never understood why we have three lines of defence operating a project when the definition of a project is a defined start and finish. But what we should be doing is managing risk and being able to alert risk where we see risk coming, and not being afraid to actually bring the question of risks up to the senior responsible officer. There is, I guess, when the question is what is advantage over Prince 2 or MSP? In fact, Praxis is Prince 2, MSP, And if you want to do a certification, I would do the Praxis one because you can actually accelerate yourself to project manager, program manager much more faster.
Thanks so much, Roger. My tamariki also Ngāti Kahanga Nunu, so there's a... There, Kira.